All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's April 15th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator. That means we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it for you and showing you the ropes. If that sounds interesting, go to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in to participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video of this session to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up by email so you can share it with your team. With that said, let's kick this off. First thing, this is a little bit new to our format. What I want to do is just make a few quick announcements. These are some Cloud Posse related, some just generally related. First, we have our community page up and running now. So if you go to cloudposse.com/community, you can see all the ways you can stay in touch with the SuiteOps community that we have, be that Slack, be that Discourse, be that these office hours, be it our podcast, be it, did I already say the Discourse forum? We also, this relates to the next item here, we did launch our merch store. So if you go to swag.cloudposse.com, you can get some cool stuff like what I got right here. This is, let's see here, do I have, yeah. So nice little hand there, little SuiteOps logo there, a bunch of stuff. Haven't checked it all out, but you know, let me know what you think of it if you order anything. Then the other big announcement is GitHub is now free in the way that most teams are probably operating. So this means that pretty much you can have unlimited repositories, unlimited collaborators, like, was it like, I forget how many, was it 20,000 build minutes or something?
2,000
included. And this is not a COVID-19 special. This is actually something they've been trying to roll out. So these prices are here to stay. The only thing it doesn't come with is the code owners. And I really do dig the code owners functionality. So for that, you got to pay $4 a user, which is also almost a fifth, or what was it before? Was it $7 or $10 a user? So that's also $8. Yeah, so they've cut the price 50% for that. I've already gotten an email in my inbox indicating these price changes. Any other cool announcements like Pierre or others that you'd like to make that you've seen in the last week?
Oh, cool announcements. Shit.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
Let me just quickly look at my work channel. So yeah. GitLab is free. Slack has a cool article about how they deploy. I will share that.
Oh, that was a nice one. Yeah, that was.
So these are the two that I had published this week.
Yeah. Zach or Andrew, anything?
Not off the top. Sorry, I know there's a lot of stuff that's going on though.
Huh?
Yeah. There's always just if anything jumps out at you. All right. So those are just some announcements over the past week. Let's get into the talking points. So first and foremost, I want to get your questions answered, but then I brainstormed and here were some things that came up that have been popular in the community over the past week. One that gets me every time is this one, who led the digital transformation at your company? Was the CEO, CTO, or COVID-19? And I think COVID-19 wins in a lot of organizations now. Kelsey Hightower had his tweet, to do, right? Describe software engineering 3 words or less. Others contributed. Zach, you had one. What was it?
Close more stories.
Close more stories. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, to do write tests. I like this one. All right. So one of the questions actually.
I actually have one. I actually have another one.
Oh,
GitLab,
okay, we'll get
GitLab has open sourced like 9 of their highest tier enterprise features, or 19, I think. One of the 2. I will share the link to that. That was quite big.
Say that one. I guess I missed the first part of what you said. Just say that one.
GitLab share open sourced or put it in their free offering 19 of their enterprise features.
True.
So this happened also this week, as far as I know, or last week.
Yeah, competition between GitHub and GitLab is speeding up, right? It's a race to the bottom here. Just give it away free.
It's fantastic. I'm loving it.
It was about time, right?
Right,
I mean,
and you as a hardcore GitLab user, like that.
yeah.
No, I love every bit of it. You know, the more competition between them, the more benefit for all the users. So
sure.
I love it.
Yeah. Were there any, which features stood out to you, Andrew, from the, and also just for everyone tuning in, I mean, we're talking about GitLab and GitHub both having big announcements this week, so let's not confuse them. So on the GitLab side of the announcements, what did you like most of those enterprise features that they are open sourcing now or moving to the community edition?
I haven't taken a close enough look. I've been so busy with proposals and stuff.
Yeah. Let's see here.
So I'm not sure.
So I like that they have open source the code repository, so npm, NuGet, Java, and C++, which basically means you don't have to pay for npm private anymore. Like to use npm private, they basically like just killed that business, in my opinion.
npm was acquired.
If it's
right?
anything like their Docker registry, I still won't use it even if it's free because it blows.
Really? Okay.
DevOps charges a surcharge for that type of artifactory access, and it really is horrible too. So
they open sourced it now, so it's free now. I guess maybe it wasn't a good enough project. That's why they made it open source. They open sourced the canary deployment and incremental rollout features. They open sourced their feature flag system, which I really dig because launch darkly was okay, but well, feature flags inside of GitLab I find kind of amazing. And the deployment boards are open source now. So these are the features that I personally dig the most. But yeah, code quality stuff, but well, yeah. So quite nice. I think also a little bit in competition to CodeFresh.
Yeah. I didn't realize they had a feature flag offering.
Yeah, it was one of the the most expensive plans. So it was the $99 one, and now it's basically free.
I've never been a huge fan of using the. I'm struggling to word this properly. I've never been a huge fan of products that
do it all,
make you do all this stuff that only works on their product. And kind of locks you into the, so all this stuff is great, like the feature flag stuffs and the deploy dashboard stuff that you talked about, but it's like, do I really want my entire DevOps tool stack to have GitLab as its keystone, where if that one little piece gets pulled out, everything falls apart?
Yeah.
right, it makes dual pipelining really hard.
So like, I like having an agnostic pipeline where, my pipeline is a set of make files or equivalent. And then like, no matter what is running that pipeline, whether it's Jenkins or GitLab CI or CodeFresh or whatever, they all run the same thing. They run make build, make test, make deploy, right? Yeah. And so, I don't use all the extra features, because then that locks me into that feature. So that's been my take on it. And I know, I might be in the minority in that kind of thing, but
I just think it's a constant trend, right? It's this constant bundling and unbundling of software, and it goes like every 5 to 7 years. And I think it is once we reach new levels or new plateaus of common functionality, then it gets rebundled all together. And we start unbundling certain aspects of it, improve on those, and then suddenly it's the unbundling of all that software.
Yeah. Someday GitLab is going to stop being everyone's darling child. And, whether it's a year from now or 20 years from now, and, people that are deep in that ecosystem are going to struggle to get out of it. and it's happened, dozens of times in, the history of software development. You've had, back before Nadella came around in Microsoft, it was a pain in the butt to get out of Microsoft's ecosystem for anything.
Yeah.
And, that's, rant over.
Oh, that's good. Let's see. There was some conversation here in the Zoom chat here. Sheldon says, agreed in part to, I guess, what we've been talking about. I use invoke build with PowerShell. All my tasks are wrapped
He's talking
up.
about like how all my tasks are make, build, make, test, make, deploy. He uses PowerShell.
Gotcha.
Yeah. My 3 words was, can't you just? There's too many people that come around and say, oh, can't you just build a web app?
That's funny.
We're still asking questions. I got one on, so we were looking at Vault and using it with Terraform. So Vault right now is you're still required to spin up a server, correct? There's no cloud offering of Vault?
No.
Like that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I mean, there might be a third party, but it's not by HashiCorp yet.
Yeah.
They partnered with like Microsoft for like the console offering. I think that was it so far.
There's VGS, right? VGS.io. I've shared in the past. It's also kind of secrets as a service.
Mm-hmm.
So you get turnkey compliance.
Oh, that's right. I remember you talking about this, I think, a few weeks ago.
Yeah, a few sessions ago. I'm not sure exactly. Don't have a first-hand account using it, but I did get a demo of it. I have played around with it on the API, and I really enjoyed it. But it might not fit your specific use case.
Yeah,
plug.
I guess I'll take a plug. But
I'll plug Sealed Secrets one more time, since it has no external dependencies whatsoever other than Kubernetes.
What did you say?
Need
Sealed
Kubernetes.
Secrets.
Sealed Secrets. Yeah. No, Sealed Secrets is cool.
But the use case, or why I ask, is because we're testing out Terraform Cloud, and in order to give some administrator credentials, we want to either talk to AWS and get kind of like just-in-time credentials, or has everybody just been creating this super admin or administrator access user and just pumping it into Terraform?
Yeah, Vault's value is being able to plug into like a bunch of different systems, and like so you can sync up your access for a Postgres instance and things like that. So you don't have to worry about like crazy scripts and Terraform workarounds just to update user accounts that might be stored in a Terraform secret that you're generating on the fly and weird stuff like that. Vault is absolutely valuable, and I would go for an offering if they had one. So.
But I guess the concern that we saw was like, all right, we're moving to Terraform Cloud. It's like we're trying to get away from managing servers, right? And so now we have to introduce a server to manage this vault, right? Yeah. So our idea was, one, is there a cloud version of Vault or anything like that? But then also, how could we securely get this administrator Terraform admin account in this IAM account in AWS into Terraform Cloud, especially when we were creating new workspaces? Should we have to, copy and paste those? Because it doesn't seem like you can, I don't know this, but I don't know if you could set up a template, Terraform Cloud workspace.
Have you tried looking at IAM roles and maybe assume role and get a token?
But if you do...
But that process needs to be orchestrated somewhere for the assume role to get the STS credentials. So
true. Yes. Correct.
Yeah, and there's no way to in pure Terraform Cloud. I don't think there's a way of doing that. Interestingly enough, we recently went through that experiment with CodeFresh. We generated one job that runs every hour. Mm-hmm. To just generate short-lived credentials that we then populate into the secrets. So we implemented our own version of it, you could say, in a complicated manner. That is the part that sucks, is that like in an ideal world, you could just grant Terraform Cloud the ability to assume role into your account with an external secret. But Terraform Cloud, for reasons unknown, but maybe not bad ones, isn't actually in AWS. So Terraform Cloud is hosted in a different data center. I think it might almost be bare metal. I forget exactly what it was told to me. But the idea here is that it's out of phase with your other infrastructure.
Yeah.
So this is Sheldon. I have a comment on the credential piece on the Terraform Cloud, and also looking for feedback on that as well.
Cool.
So the way that I originally did it was clunky, and because there's no shared library for secrets, what I ended up doing was, just using like a REST API call to add the AWS credentials, and quickly realized that that was not a great solution. So what I ended up doing was creating a remote a workspace that created the IAM credentials, probably using one of your modules. And all of the other modules just have a Terraform file called like get credentials, and it uses the remote data source so that there's no hard coding or environment variables being pulled. It just pulls from another remote workspace in the interim. But do you have any comment about that, or a better way to to handle rotating those tokens among a lot of workspaces?
Yeah, so that's what we went down the road. I can't say from operational experience, just to scope my recommendation here, but we did a POC internally. It's not open sourced, but where we used the Terraform provider for Terraform Cloud, and then created an inheritance model where we could update one project with the secrets or settings there, and then updating that would cause all the other projects to get updated. So it's a little bit like what you're saying. Let me see if I find it.
That's definitely a weakness right now, in my opinion, for managing it. Like Azure DevOps has the concept of a library where you have a shared credential and you can just update that and everything pulls it in. And they don't have that right now. So you have to either pull your own credentials or you have to use environment variables. Yeah, it's definitely rough right now for that part.
Yeah, I agree. It's also the problem with like GitHub Actions. And with GitHub Actions, there's not even an API to set the secrets, even if you wanted to do something on your own. There's
no Terraform command to add a secret to a repository?
There's no API endpoint in GitHub to set secrets. If there was, we could do it probably with Terraform, but that's, yeah.
I actually have something similar for GitLab. So GitLab, you can set secrets, but you can have the key multiple times scoped to environments, and they don't have a different ID. So I actually opened up a bug today with the Terraform GitLab provider because, well, it doesn't work because I have one key, which is AWS secret in production and development, and it will always take the first one that comes alphabetically. So kind of sucks.
It looks like we didn't. I was going to show what we had, but it looks like it wasn't pushed up. Cool. So we had one question that came up in the Slack earlier today. I think we posted some answers. Zach posted something, I posted something, but I'd really like to know what others have seen or used. It comes up quite frequently. Is the data anonymization techniques, whether it be for GDPR or just hygienic staging environments or dev environments with realistic data at scale, so to say. Well, your mileage may vary on that, but realistic data for testing environments. And Zach shared some links. There's Faker, which is like some Python library for that. What have you guys used or seen?
I'm a strong believer in more good unit testing. I guess I don't do a lot of data anonymization.
Hey,
Yeah,
this is Chonan. Hi, it's my first time to the office hour,
Hey,
so
welcome,
I posted
Chonan.
that question. Yeah, so I want to give a bit more context.
Yeah.
So the company that I work for is a fintech company. We process a ton of loan applications, and what we have in the core of our product mix sort of a underwriting engine for all these loans that come through. So I guess the challenge here is, we've got a very complex workflow because there's all these criteria that we needed to execute before we approve something, right? And then a loan application come in, could be in any shape or form. And so I guess our team's challenge has been the past where we found it difficult to, do a complete software quality control just through, the unit test alone, because there's just there's just so many different possible scenarios, depending on what data that we could pull, right, just to underwrite the loan. It's not just what's on the loan application. There's all these third-party data sources that we have to pull in. So my challenge, I guess my challenge is, okay, right now, whenever we need to deploy some new feature, right, they are very sensitive, that could maybe, have certain dependencies on, maybe like the collections, like the payment collection data, for instance. So like when that came in, on which date did it pass the due date and all that stuff, and then they have an impact on interest and accrued interest and whatnot. So right now what we're doing is, we're doing a clone of our production database, and then we're just, setting that up in a very closed off environment, and then run tests on that and to see the output. But that's obviously not ideal, given there's a ton of sensitive information. So I want to do something where, I could anonymize data, right? And without having to, recreate all these possible different scenarios, because it's very hard. So that's really where
So the way I look at this is more of a architectural and philosophical issue than an actual I'm trying to solve a problem issue. The issue I see here is, am I trying to get away with not having what sounds like massive number of unit tests to cover a massive number of different, logic paths that things can go down, by using integration and end-to-end tests, which is what this fake data does, right? It's testing the system as a whole, and you're inverting your testing pyramid, right? So when you have lots and lots of end-to-end and integration tests and not very many unit tests, everything becomes really tightly coupled. It becomes a lot harder to test. You change one thing and it breaks a lot of tests. And you need to invert that in testing pyramid so that you have the most unit tests and the least number of end-to-end tests. So the having that data to run against in like an end-to-end test is good, but it should be a validation that everything's working properly, not making sure that all your logic is working correctly. What's making sure that all your logic is working correctly are unit tests. And so I understand that, you're saying, I don't have all those unit tests. I'm telling you to make them.
Okay, makes sense.
I don't have much to add to it. It's a hard problem. I don't know.
I have another question. Do you use something like RabbitMQ Kafka between, like, how do you process the data? Where do you get the queue from to work on?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you have like something like RabbitMQ Kafka in front of it? So how you basically get the data to process or work on?
No, we don't have Kafka in place. I mean, the data basically, gets pulled in when we send a request asynchronously to API endpoints, and then they come through. Sometimes we process them on the spot if they're fairly fast, and then there are times when we do recurring API endpoint calls on specific time of the day. because sometimes we need to wait for stuff to clear on the third-party side.
Okay.
So we do that, but at the end of the day, everything it's in the database, right? And then we have to, and then we run them.
Okay. Otherwise, I would have suggested something like a dev path, where you basically just like have a new consumer group or whatever you are using, Kafka as consumer group, and you just like compare outputs of both services. But this is hardly not possible here. So yeah, unit tests. That's the only thing that I can offer in there right now.
Yeah.
For data anonymization, how do you say it? Anonymization. Anyway, so for that, I come from a background with SQL Server, doing DBA work. So when I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind that's also important is data classification. If you classify which pieces of information are sensitive, then there is the potential, if you have your, everything, you have your ducks in a row, that you can grab production-related data, pull it into a process where you remove identifiable information, and then you're able to actually test with data that's real-world scenario. Personally, in the type of environment I'm in, we can't do random generated data at all because it's a very complicated relational database system. And so whenever you deal with that, I'm a big fan of Redgate, was a member of the Friends of Redgate for a while. And they have some good tooling for the SQL Server side and that mentality to mask data, pull it into a pipeline, then give that anonymized snapshot data for people to test. So regardless what stack you're doing, I'm sure that there's some solutions that talk about that classification and taking actual data, anonymizing it for your testing.
That's a good point. Thanks.
Do the vendors you integrate with provide mock APIs for a lot of this stuff, the data you pull?
Yeah, I think most of them do. But I guess the challenge is some of the data is a bit generic, right? And there, like, we haven't been able to find the data that they sent us, exactly mimics our situation. So sometimes we have to resort to, I guess, manual testing, but actually, I think Andrew also brought up a good point. Like maybe there just needs to be time spent putting together, more robust unit tests all around. But it's just a lot of different scenarios. That's really the challenge.
Yeah, I think it becomes, in your case, then it becomes almost a full-time job for someone probably to own that piece of it to ensure sufficient coverage.
Yeah, that's and that's the challenge too. Like we don't have that kind of resource.
Though there are companies that specialize in just doing this, and that can be offshore, possibly.
Wow, good to know.
Yeah, it's interesting where if you think about executives, they have had executive assistants for decades, for as long as they've been around. And then in management, you have your personal assistants and everything else. But developers, who do they get? They don't get anybody. But one of the realizations I had early on, and this was a stepping stone for Cloud Posse when we were just getting our start, was I was just a freelancer, right? I was just a consultant, but I needed a technical assistant to speed up my velocity. So I hired somebody, in this case off of Upwork, that took care of that grunt work I didn't want to do, and it was very inexpensive. So I think that creating this, identifying where you have portions of your code or work that aren't sensitive in that way, that you can use offshore support to do some of the grunt work that your team doesn't have the time to get to, but you need to do.
Yeah, fabulous. I'll definitely give it a try.
Yeah. And for those of you, Upwork is awesome for this type of stuff. My trick for this is filter for 90% satisfaction rating, filter for freelancers, so you're not working with agencies, depending on the relationship you want to have. Agencies can be good or bad. And then filter for number of hours on the platform. So they should have at least 1,000 to 10,000 hours or something like that on the platform. So when they have a 90, now you filtered for people with reputation at stake and proven reputation at doing what they're doing. So.
And how do you catch for somebody who's not outsourcing that work to another person?
Reputation. Honestly, it comes down to then reputation, right? So they probably can't do that successfully as a freelancer on Upwork, doing thousands and thousands of hours and maintain a solid reputation. Also, it's against the Upwork terms of service. Ultimately, if they are doing that, they need to classify themselves as an agency on the platform. And there are many agencies on there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then lastly, trust. It's one of these things. You might lose a little bit of money in the beginning when you're getting started working with people and you filter out some bad apples, but by and large, that's not been my experience. By and large, most people have been great, and I haven't had problems with them.
What kind of work are you outsourcing on Upwork? Like, what kind of talent can I find?
For me, a lot of it has been marketing automation, boring WordPress type of things. It's been, what else have I done? It was Terraform module maintenance. What else? Most recently, writing scrapers for some things so I could get more data into our data warehouse.
Okay, cool.
Do you have preference for a particular country, or what's your?
So a lot of my team at Cloud Posse is based in Russia, so it's more just of a convenience factor. So I've been focused in Russia. We did recently bring on an excellent person from Poland as well.
Yeah, I heard good things about Poland.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's a really awesome member and contributor of our team now. So, anybody else have any outsourcing tips? I'm curious to learn.
Well, I have onboarded I think 3 bigger developer agencies in the past, doing various things. It all comes down to how well you connect. So if you bring on a development team and do some kind of nearshoring, be in frequent contact with them, talk a lot with them, do stand-ups, even though try to integrate them as much as possible. Maybe I'm based in Berlin, so I can travel easily to Prague, wherever I need to go. So for me, I was there at least once a month when I was doing nearshoring. But yeah, just try to integrate them as good as possible, because then they care a lot too, because if they have a good project they work on, they want to stay with the project as well. So I've seen people that just didn't give a shit, and I had to say, hey, with this agency, hey, please, sorry, this guy is not really working out. He's not pushing the stuff that he should, and then they do that. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks. So on the next talking point was these DevOps patterns that Zach has put together. These are also, you could say, trends in DevOps. I thought it was a nice collection of what we've been seeing going around. So Zach's on the call here as well. I don't know if you want to point anything out in particular about this, or any kind of feedback in particular you'd like to get, Zach?
Yeah, I tried really hard to avoid putting GitOps in here.
Yeah.
Because it's such a trendy word that everyone seems to have a different definition for. In fact, we had a discussion on it in one of the threads today.
I saw, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this is all sort of open. I actually, at the very end, there is a link to a repo that I welcome contributions to, because as I've been working multiple DevOps projects, I've noticed that there's certain patterns that I take for granted or have worked in, or that I notice that I don't always have a good name for in a reference. The selfish reason behind the entire article is so I could start putting names to those things and referencing them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Establish
it.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I mean, it feels kind of like I'm trying to coin terms, but not really. And some of it is a little bit funny, I guess. I don't know. So you know, and is there a difference between a split infrastructure and a cradle infrastructure? You know, these are things that I would absolutely welcome input on. And you know, if there are things that are missing, please, you know, visit the repo. You know, do a PR at it, you know, and start. Let's have a point of reference, because I know DevOps has not actually really changed all that much for what the core tenets and concepts are in quite a few years. But there are new things emerging and emergent patterns that are happening that may help, you know, junior DevOps people or people who haven't been in infrastructure for a decade, like myself, you know, sort of better understand the lay of the land that they're working in, and that maybe where they're working isn't always how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So that was sort of part of the goals of this.
Yeah, this one resonates with me. Like, you know, and I just caught myself in it right now. It's kind of interesting because what infrastructure as code has come to mean to me is just declarative type definitions of what your infrastructure should look like. But now it's kind of funny. It's just like the bundling and unbundling. So then people start, you know, they're trying to do all these things the declarative syntax wasn't meant to do. And then they're frustrated with that. And if it was only in a real language, I could get this done. Oh, so you're talking about Bodo, which has been around for, you know, like a decade or whatever, right? No, actually, no, I'm talking about Pulumi now. And so it's kind of like, so then people are going to be writing Pulumi, and then that's going to become a total spaghetti mess of infrastructure code, and you're going to have libraries, and it's going to be, you know, everything that people have been poo-pooing on for Jenkins, for, you know, with Groovy pipelines versus declarative pipelines. And so I don't know, it's an interesting one. I wonder where it's going to end. I think what it's going to mean is we're going to break out a little bit. We're going to prove all these things that we want to do in real code, and then come back again, consolidate it again on a better declarative syntax, maybe.
I mean,
and I was on the fence of saying, you know, even scripts that just, you know, call the CLI to create things like EKS, CTL, or, you know, it's like there's a few, you know, others out there that are sort of kind of like real code. It's not really the same thing as infrastructure as code. So.
That is another pattern in here. I don't know if you have it, you know, the asterisk CTL. The Istio CTL, the kubectl, the we have our cop CTL.
No, that's not one I added, but see, I could have probably written a book on things.
Oh yeah, it's like, where did you just, yeah, this is the start to a book. And yeah, the config ops, I think that was a nice distinction. Like, yeah, it's a subset of Git ops, but it's a lower hanging fruit maybe to achieve. Or also sometimes you might achieve more infrastructure level Git ops, but doing config ops is actually quite a bit more difficult. Like we're talking Grafana, right? Like I don't want to be writing Grafana JSON. I want to be using the GUI, but then I need to export it and feed it back into my source control.
Right.
Also, WikiOps. That was a new one I learned. I like what it describes very clearly. Some things it's too much work to automate. In that case, you just describe the process in your wiki.
There you go. Actually, we'll have to add that one.
Yeah.
Did someone actually use Pulumi before? Because I think it's very, very interesting, but I have not yet to use it.
The first time I looked at it, it was mostly for TypeScript, and I'm not a TypeScript guy, but I guess they've added more Python feature functionality.
It has JavaScript, TypeScript, Golang, Python, and .NET Core now.
Yes. For major languages.
So this is Sheldon. Just wanted to chime in because I actually just read yesterday on this and I found it really interesting. I'm in an environment that does not have a lot of Python programmers or anything like that. So everything I've done, I've tried to move away from doing any type of code generator, wrappers, or anything to keep it very, even though it feels limited at times, to try and keep it native without any extra tooling. However, if you have a lot of Python developers, I can see, having gone through this article on it, that like how do you know how to say it, Pulumi or whatever, is,
sounds right.
Yeah, it is a really fantastic concept for maybe not giant complicated infrastructure pieces, but it's powered by the Terraform SDK. So unlike a lot of these where they're like, you know, it'll just go off and die and do its own thing, every API that they're calling is actually the same thing HCL is doing. So I thought that was an interesting concept.
So they started that way, but then they ran into limitations of what some of the providers could do that are just fundamental to Terraform. So some of the things they've been re-implementing from the ground up, because as developers, sorry, I don't mean this condescending, but yeah, look, we always like to build things, right? And we can always see that we should probably, if we just redid it this way, it'd be so much easier. So with Pulumi though, I had a 1-hour conversation with the sales guy, technical sales guy at the Scale conference. And it was really interesting. I remember walking away from it like, man, I really wish I could move over to Pulumi if I didn't have to manage 140 modules right now in Terraform. And I would be a lot more excited about Pulumi if I could bridge the gap. Like it was the equalizer, like I could continue using Terraform the way we use Terraform, and I could also use Pulumi in other situations. I don't know. That was one idea. What do I want to say though with this? All right, go on. Somebody else had something to add to Pulumi.
So I gave certain developers the ability to create infrastructure within their Cradle infrastructure, I guess. So I can see a combination of the both being used in some scenarios.
Yeah.
You know, where you just lay the foundation of where they're able to do what they want to do, and
that's what I wanted to say. So, you know, I have this, if you tune into office hours, I always bring up this thing we call the 4 layers of infrastructure. You have your foundational, you have your platform, you have your shared services, and then you have your application layer, like the things that you care about in your company. This has come up in the past, like, you know, customers have asked, well, we want to use CDK, or what, you know, why don't we use maybe CloudFormation, or why don't we use Pulumi? So CDK, by the way, that's more along the lines of the AWS branded version of Pulumi, so to say. It's not Pulumi, but it's like Pulumi. My argument now is basically, why don't we stick with Terraform for all the foundational infrastructure, all the stuff that doesn't need to change all the time. It's nice, it's declarative, we have, it's been proven, we have the shareable modules, there's a community around it. It's not the flavor of the month. Now, when we want to go ahead and deploy your applications, your specific things, yeah, maybe Terraform, if anyone who's done Terraform in Lambda knows it sucks for that. Yeah, there's some people who've done it more or less better, but it still sucks compared to what else is out there. So maybe using another abstraction for that, maybe Pulumi is the answer for those kinds of situations where you want to deploy your application layer.
That actually answers an area that I was hoping we could answer, which was the Lambda. I've only done limited amounts. I did one Python layer, a Python Lambda function, and then a PowerShell core one, testing these out. And I have some ChatOps type functions and just helper things I wanted to start small with, where I could, you know, just inventory some items in AWS, things like that.
Yeah.
So right now, what I've observed is when I used Terraform to do it, it's kind of been a blocker because there's so many pieces. Then I wanted to go construct the module, you know, to do it in the VPC, you know, and I know you guys have some great stuff, but it's a lot. Whereas I wanted something that basically set up the permissions, spun it up. I've got a function, all the permissions and everything ready to go. Is there a better framework that's not adding another level of complexity, like the serverless is what I've heard about and some others? Is there anything that you guys recommend that's helped you guys use that?
Serverless is kind of a good example of this, where what serverless does is it quote unquote compiles down to CloudFormation. So it's a generator in that sense. But with CloudFormation is honestly quite nice from just an end user perspective, where you just throw the dock over the fence and it magically appears on the other side or rolls back if there are any problems. And with Terraform, we get that. With Kubernetes, on the other hand, Kubernetes is a lot more like having that CloudFormation ability where you just submit a doc and it makes it happen. So what I'd like to see, and what's basically starting to come out more and more is operators for Kubernetes to do those kinds of things. It's not maybe going to solve your answer this very minute, but I think that's, if you bought into the Kubernetes ecosystem, then I think Kubernetes is going to have some answers for you real short.
Then you can already use OpenFaaS, which basically is super simple function as a service on Kubernetes. I personally really despise AWS serverless, Azure functions, or GCP functions, because they give you so much limitations and boundaries that once you have bought into it, you cannot go out of it. So like there's a limit. Like when
Your
I started,
observability is like nil. So.
yeah, observability is another thing. But like there was, when I started, I guess a limit of like 10 seconds that a function could run. I think it was 2016 or something before it was GA. And all these kind of things, like sometimes it takes 10 seconds to get the database connection running and check if the migration scripts are run. So, but now it's, I guess 5 or 15 minutes or something, but still, it imposes lots of limitations on the developer that he has to be aware of all of a sudden. So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
That's like my only advice around it.
Yeah. Ops dev. All right, what's this pattern?
So I'm just noticing a trend that there's a lot more tooling that's allowing developers to directly connect to things like Kubernetes clusters and or even if you look at Visual Studio code plugins that allow them to directly push out artifacts for Azure functions, for instance. That was the one I threw an example out there for. It's extremely valuable and useful, and it's actually a really good pattern to have for your beginning environments, or when you're testing out concepts before they hit to a point where you need to have pipelines in multiple environments. And it's just a pattern I've noticed, and I'm not sure how much I'm on board with it yet. Having things that can directly affect containers and running clusters always scares the crap out of me. So
I'm frustrated with it. Like, there's no really good development story, local dev story, for taking what you're doing in production with Kubernetes and doing something like that locally. There's Minikube. Yeah, there's telepresence. Yeah, there's all these different things that have spun up, and they necessarily are opinionated. And those opinions are unfortunately often not what you have running in production. So are we gaining much by doing it? So the reason for doing local dev on Kubernetes needs to be qualified. Look, we're not trying to reproduce what we're doing in production locally on Minikube. We're actually using Minikube because it's simplifying us doing this, this, and this. So I think that's an important distinction. But we're not trying to solve this parity case. For that reason, we've stuck predominantly with just recommending Docker Compose, because it's the lowest common denominator. It works with most IDEs. Developers get it. It's easy to get up and running. Unfortunately, it shields them from a little bit of the Kubernetes complexity, but so be it.
That's sort of where I fall on recommendations as well. There are some really cool tools out there that do some interesting things and pushing things to, Helm, repos and things like that. I'm not against them. I just don't. I think that without the full picture, they might be more harmful than good. So.
Yeah. Let's see. So since last office hours, we shared a little bit about Lens. Has anybody kicked the tires on Lens since we talked about it or brought it up?
I did. It's awesome. Yeah, Andrew was right. So.
Yeah.
I also used it a bit and also recommended it to the people because I'm currently introducing Kubernetes in my company. So I showed them Lens and said, hey, here's a nice user interface. Interact with it and try to understand what Kubernetes is doing. And since you can click stuff, people are engaging with it much more. And I said, once you have understood and seen what's available to you, try to get the same data in the CLI.
Yeah.
At least
it'd be interesting if it almost provided like in Chrome or Firefox, you right click on the request and you can copy as curl.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Maybe we should.
That would be kind of cool if Lens had that. Copy as kubectl.
Yeah. But yeah, in the end, it's an amazing tool. It really works well. I kind of didn't get the Prometheus integration working for my cluster, but
I think there might be something when it went open source that broke or isn't yet fixed. It was working for me the last week or so before they imploded, and then it stopped working, and now it's still not working for me. But I haven't spent more than 5 minutes trying to figure out why.
Oh, it just updated. Now it works. So maybe it's
sweet.
Okay,
I got to update
awesome.
mine maybe.
Yeah, no, it's working. Like I see network file system all there. Cool. Well, easy. Then I don't even have to explain Grafana. Huh. I'm not sure if that is a good thing, but yeah. Cool. I have a question related to because people were saying, hey, there's these awesome IDEs. I tried to use the Terraform Visual Code plugin, and I hated it because the language server, it's not really working, and the JetBrains for PHP Storm and like all the other JetBrains IDEs, the Terraform plugin is just super amazing, gives code completion, tells me which parameters or key value maps a resource can have. Like, what are you guys using for like cloud native configuration, writing YAML and so on? Would be super interesting for me.
For John Bland, but he's not on the call right now. He's the VS Code master. But
this is Sheldon. I use VS Code and am I would say pretty advanced at using VS Code, and I know it and used it a long time. But Terraform, the plugin is definitely not up to par. It is it has lots of issues. Even with the early access, it's still very, very buggy. So if you want, I'm just used to not having that support, to be honest, in it. But PyCharm or one of those with that plugin is probably going to be what will give you more stability if you want, all of that extra, like the hinting and everything to actually be solid.
I just, like, for me, I use it all the time. But some people are like, yeah, I just use VS Code, and like I want to make a recommendation regarding Terraform and so on. And if I saw people like struggling with Terraform a lot, because for me, I just like have all these nice code completion features with my JetBrains IDEs, which they don't have, unfortunately. So I was like, maybe there's
a known issue. Yeah, it's a known issue.
Yeah, I really don't understand because the JetBrains package is open source as well. So why is no one actually just like copying it over to? Yeah, I know. I have the JetBrains complete package. So for me, I just like have it in every single project. But yeah, I was hoping there's something where people say, well, use this instead. But
so we have a member, this guy Julio. He's been working on the plugin for VS Code. So, and he's in the SweetOps community. So he might be the guy to reach out to if there are any recommendations. I know he was really active in the beginning, soliciting feedback. Unfortunately, I don't think he got enough feedback, so I don't know if how active he's right now. But he'd be the guy to ping.
There is a early access. There is a sorry to interrupt. There's a optional language server that you can enable. I'm sure you already are aware of that. Does say it supports 12. I've had very, very minimal success with it. It still flags for me a lot of issues with syntax and things that aren't. So I'm in the opposite camp. I don't use PyCharm. I downloaded it trying to get more comfortable with it for this, but it's hard for me to juggle between it. So I've gotten used to coding Terraform without any of that because it's there's nothing that gives you that same level of integration right now.
I totally understand. For me, like I try to use a little bit more like VS Code because, well, one IDE for all of them, and VS Code can provide that very easily. While with JetBrains, you are like either using Golang or PyCharm or WebStorm or PHP Storm, whichever project you're currently working on, and it's just like it's a pain because like setting all these different IDEs up and so on. It's Well, anyways. Just like wanted to know if there's like the one tool that people recommended, but yeah.
I have an embarrassing confession to make. I'll be in VS Code, and so frequently in the little terminal window, I'll end up entering Vim.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm a VS Code user.
Yeah, maybe there's something that Vim provides with Terraform as well. Like I don't mind using Vim. It's just like for me the integration was so far the best with the JetBrains tools. Jen has another question, I guess.
Well, you saw a question somewhere?
Yeah, Sheldon. I'm evaluating Datadog right now, so I had a quick APM related question if you have time at the end. Blah.
Oh yeah, sure. So we're in the last few minutes here. Let's see if you want to summarize that quickly, Sheldon.
Sure. Yeah. So I had a journey with App Dynamics, and hopefully, if any of y'all have touched it, understand that that was a journey that I'm glad ended. So right now, I'm kind of at the point where I'm trying to do really a minimal viable implementation. I want something I can spin up. I'm very comfortable with Amazon Systems Manager. So I wanted something that was pretty much grab tags from instances, automatically let me run a command, install it, and pretty much just get visibility across all my environment for, you know, services being up, the basics. And then later add support for APM related work to trace some .NET, some Java, things like that. I set up a trial yesterday for DevOps for Datadog and just did a quick test. It seemed interesting. I was a little bit disappointed not to find dedicated database monitoring that was a little bit more specialized like App Dynamics had. So I just wanted a quick, I know that there's a million options out there. There's a lot of different things that you can look at. I've seen signal effects, I've seen Datadog, and my primary goals here was to provide a repository of self-service oriented metrics for people to, you know, explore dashboards, stuff like that on, as well as traceability. So I'm hoping that, you know, just a quick impression that you guys have had on that would be useful, especially considering I'm trying to do some custom metrics and stop pushing them, you know, to Grafana, Influx, all these different places. I'd like to have one place I can drop metrics here and there and, you know, be able to generate a report on.
So it really depends on how much integration you want. So for me, I do everything with Prometheus, but there's lots of setup involved in getting like detailed metrics for like each request route and the different things that are involved with that request. So if you want to have like time spans, I really, really love the Elasticsearch APM, like from Elastic.
Sorry, real quick. Can you come real quick? So I'm in a .NET environment with Java and some of those other things, and a lot of the options that you're describing, my knowledge of them when I did a scan was very much like great for Kubernetes, things like that, but not necessarily cross multiple stacks. Is that incorrect? Or is the ELK APM like cross multiple different types of stacks?
So the APM stuff definitely works with .NET Core.
Okay.
I've not used it with C# or .NET Normal or Java, but
okay.
There's plugins for that available. I can shoot you a couple of screenshots after this session.
That would be much appreciated.
Like I will put it in office hours because I have it set it up for one of my projects. Of course, there comes a bit of a price tag with it, but like database integration works super easy, flawlessly. Nginx logs aggregated, looks super, super nice. The dashboards you get out of the box are nice. But for Prometheus, like if you kind of want to use an open source solution, it's just like a lot more setup involved in it.
I don't want to manage my own. That's kind of where this is.
Well,
it needs to be a SaaS service.
Yeah. So just so you get like a different view, I will make a couple of screenshots for Elasticsearch for you.
I just found the page too, so that's very useful. Yeah, but I need a SaaS, something that's basically where it's not all on me at that point, because initially it'll be observability of the environments to make sure agents are up and so on, and then later tracing and some custom metrics. So some of the stuff like Grafana, while I love Grafana in that sense of flexibility, but I can't really find a use case for it right now because it's just my thing off on the side instead of it being more of a company-wide thing.
Yeah, it's a bit pricey. I'm not sure what the other tools cost, but yeah, I will let's chat about it in the office hours channel later.
Okay, so in that last question on that is, that's a great open one, potentially SaaS, maybe if they have it. Is there anything at the same level as, is like Datadog considered one of the leaders for like integrations, custom metrics, you know, the whole caboodle, was it? Or is there some other that you would say is potentially even better with integrations than Datadog? Because it seems they've come up to the top with them and, you know, Splunk.
Just New Relic and Sysdig, but no first-hand experience. I didn't know Elastic even did this APM. This is really cool.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. Like, it has open tracing support built in. It works really, really well.
It says it's open source. Is there?
Maybe it's even an open source self-hosted version. I have managed Elasticsearch cluster from them, so might be. Like,
Yeah, I saw
they did a lot around the licensing, how Elasticsearch is licensed.
APM server. Yeah, it's a separate project on GitHub.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking because I saw the Logz.io or whatever, they released a SaaS service for kind of the elk stuff, right? Kibana, Grafana and everything. And they're trying to basically, I guess, sort of replace like what Sumo Logic and Grafana hosted would do, that type of stuff. And I'm looking at it saying that's all great. Like, I love visualizations and all this, but I'm much more of the mindset of what I need is a SaaS with lots of integrations, so I don't have to build everything. And, you know, Datadog seemed to come to the top. Signal Effects was also interesting. And I was just hoping somebody had a hands-on, like, yeah, they were great, you know, or.
Yeah. This is Blaze. So I worked at Sumo Logic for a while. I wouldn't profess to be like an authority on this space, but my impression is that there are folks who go deep, and then there are folks who go wide. So,
Okay.
and you know what I mean? In other words, and so if you're, and then the other question is volume. Like, do you have a lot of, you know, are you talking about like really big data sets? Because
probably not on
okay.
the scale of what you would talk about. More
Yeah.
Probably 100 servers running just regular like tracing activity on web services, but not like terabytes and, you know.
Yeah, like not like the Super Bowl or whatever. Yeah.
Nothing like that.
Honestly, I mean, yeah, I think you know, Datadog's probably not a bad, you know, if you're just sort of looking for something, you know, that will work, a Swiss Army knife type thing.
Okay.
Probably can't go wrong with them, or the Elastic stuff too. The thing about APM is that it's kind of relatively new field, so some folks will advertise it, and so I would basically go with whatever Pierre suggests.
Awesome.
Nice.
Hey guys,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we are at the end of the hour here, so I got to wrap things up. I appreciate everyone participating. I picked up a few new things as always, so thank you for those recommendations. Remember to register for our weekly office hours if you haven't already. To do that, go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. And if you want to book a session directly with me, you can go to cloudposse.com/quiz. Thanks everyone again for sharing. I learned a lot. A recording of this will be posted in the Office Hours channel and syndicated to our podcast at podcast.cloudposse.com. See you guys next week, same place, same time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.